tonight. So my name is Terry Dillon from TDS Solutions. We only decided to do this footy webinar probably 3 weeks ago because our focus has all been administration. We hadn't really focused on field. Our focus has all been about off field. But we've found a lot of our clubs, there's the same challenges where they're learning on the run, they're trying to pull things together themselves. The feedback we got from last week's webinar was outstanding. I know we had 300 people watch it from start to finish, which was outstanding. And we'll record tonight's session. We're probably setting a bit of a precedent, but when we do our admin webinars, we won't be releasing the webinars publicly, but in terms of the footy webinars, we've agreed to do that because there's probably more IP in the admin side of things. So anyone who's got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. young Jono will be here with me tonight. And something goes wrong, he'll steer me in the right direction. And basically, so that we'll kick into gear. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Actually, Jono, just do the next poll first to see how many people who sat in last week's session, and actually I think it's poll number 2. Yep. So let's do that, mate.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick questions there. Did you sit in on last week's footy webinar, and have you attended any of our other admin webinars?
And we've had some really loyal followers who have been in, some have been in 10 different webinars, which has been great. So just before we kick into gear, so okay, we're going to write, still growing. Yeah, so we've got 12 newbies, so welcome, and we've got about 50 people that are sat in last week's webinar, which is great, and I'm assuming there'll be a few more to come as well. So have you attended the other TDS webinars? Over half the people sitting in tonight have sat in more than 2 webinars, so that's great for us. So it gives us a bit of data as to terms of the market that we're touching. I just want to touch on Coraline. I'm not going to spend too much time because people have already heard the story, but those that haven't, this is my country club. I'm VP of it. It's in the middle of nowhere, no town, no population, but it's one of the great success stories in community sport. Every year it has its challenges, but if I give you a little bit of a rundown, and I think it's important to set the scene as to where this club has come from. It's always been a competitive club for years, but it was born in 1925. It won 1 flag in the first 80 years, and I know it's not all about premierships, but the club across all grades had won 34% between these 80 years. 1 senior premiership, no under 18s premierships. But since then, the club has been in 8 of the last 11 grand finals, 4 premierships, 4 as runner-up. But across all grades, we now have a 71% win-loss ratio in the middle of nowhere. And it's the philosophy, if you build it and provide good administration, provide good coaching, you'll hear me say you're one coach and one president away from a good club becoming a not so good club. If you put the wrong people in those positions, things can turn sour really quickly. And that's really, I think it's important to set that scene. So this is just a recap for those that were in attendance last week. We talked about some clubs, going to buy a premiership and the boom and the bust. But if you want really real success, it's about having long-term sustainable success. We also provided the salary cap estimator, which we did share to clubs. So clubs who are predicting their player payments didn't have a tool. And I think that's a lot of my feedback this week has been really, really valuable in terms of that tool we did provide. We then looked at, obviously with the change in the salary cap and the expectations of player contracts and the coaching contracts, there's been a real management in the mindset of of the administrators speaking to the players and the coaches about how they negotiate their contracts moving forward. So we spent some time on that. We talked about potentially next year, revenue will still be a challenge. So we'll touch on some revenue initiatives tonight. We've got here football department structure we touched on last week about the importance of getting that right and supporting the coach. We also talked about departmental budgeting and having a budget for footy. some of my clubs have one budget line. How do we raise enough money to pay the players? That's all they have. And they don't have a budget for footy. They don't have an overall club budget. So that's a gap. We talked about the ways to negotiate last week and particularly determining the market value of the players. We talked about the silly season, which for many would be well and truly right into it now. So, and then we talked about the style of coach. Not every club has the same coach or needs the same coach. And we talked about the different styles. So that's sort of the framework of what we went through last week. This data for me is really compelling. And look, we had nearly 2 out of 3 of clubs had a budget, which I thought was a good sign. I'd like to know the depth of that budget, but the ones in the red didn't have a budget. This over here, the blue is what the clubs have said they were paying in their salary cap in 2019. So we only had 12, 13% of clubs who's paid the salary cap in 2019. We asked the clubs, what percentage of the cap do you think you'll spend? 100%. We had 50 or nearly 45% compared to like 15%. So there's more clubs saying we're going to spend more money on our contracts this year. Or maybe not more money, but because the cap's come down, they've probably got a chance that they think they've got a chance of spending the cap. So I think that is not a bad thing, but you've got to have the model to pay the bills. We looked at here, the question that concerned us the most, after going through the numbers, we asked the clubs, do you think you can raise enough money to pay the bills? So let's say your salary cap's 100 grand. Do you think you can raise, remember I mentioned multipliers by 3, whatever you pay your players, multiplied by 3, that's what you need to turn over to pay the bills. We had less than a quarter, about 18% who said, we're pretty confident we can raise enough money to pay the bills. The biggest concern is the other shade. 80% of clubs were concerned next year, and we still will be living with COVID in some capacity. 80% of clubs are concerned that we may not be able to raise the money to pay the bills. Now, that's a concern, and hopefully some of the initiatives and some of the webinars that you sit in, that we can help narrow that gap. But I think it was really, just wanted to present you those findings from last week. Anyone who's got, hey, Jono, can you talk to this for a sec, mate?
Yeah, so obviously we post a lot of stuff on Facebook and YouTube. So if you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe on YouTube, because we'll be putting up a lot more content over the next couple of months or so as we tick through the webinars. But yeah, so follow us on social media. Yep.
So if anyone's got Facebook, we post a heap of stuff on there, an absolute heap of stuff. New grants, there's a Victorian grant out this week. There was a Queensland grant out last week. We've pretty much got every state represented here tonight. So I think it's just a good resource to hear what's going on, and we pass on everything that we hear. So I can talk about insurances. We've obviously got Chris Connolly. Hopefully Connell's here. Just make sure he's here, Jono.
Yeah, he's here.
He is here. Fantastic. Yep. Basically, the league or AFL, which is Marsh/JLT, have a nationwide insurance policy. And I think this is more focused on the players. And I think with the player payments coming down next year, there might be an increased focus on income protection as an example. I'm going to talk about, it depends on which league you're at. And a lot of clubs are given the default insurance, right? So I know with my competition, our league pays for silver insurance. And if someone does a knee as an example, and we did lose a guy this year with a knee, they get $2.5 grand maximum per claim, 75% reimbursement of up to a maximum of $2.5 grand. That doesn't go that far. When most of these players are young, they don't have private cover, so there is a real risk there. Every year, our club that I'm involved with, we take out this maximum claim. $7.5 grand, you get 90% reimbursement. That will get you pretty close to, if you had to have a serious knee reco, it's very affordable. I know for our senior club, we insure 2 senior teams and 2 junior teams when I say junior teams, under 16s and under 18s, it costs us about $1,000 a year. I think it's money well spent. And for the sake of, and that's across 100 players, which is equivalent to $10 per player, say. Some leagues have the default bronze as their base. So if you get injured, do a knee, get a serious injury, you don't have private cover and you need some serious attention. We've all seen clubs who have, they have fundraisers for players who get injured and because they've obviously got some loss of income as well. So what I just think, have a look at that. I reckon it's really important to the clubs that often some of my administrators don't know about the insurance. They just get what's given to them and it just rolls over. So, Jono, can you kick into that poll, that third poll?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the link's in the chat as well.
Is that okay, Jono? I've got someone.
I'm just getting it up now.
Can everyone thumbs up if you can hear me okay, or is it a bit? Yeah, it's all thumbs up. If someone's having some trouble. So it might be you, Tyrrell. You might have to log in and log out.
Yeah, not sure what's going on there, Tyrrell, but the next poll's up. So if you could just tick that one off.
So the question is, if you don't know, just don't answer, but do you think you've got bronze, silver, gold, or platinum? All right. And if you don't, well, probably I don't have and I probably should have put an unsure there because everyone may not know the answer to that question. So we're just going through these results now. Actually, John, I will go with that. That'll give us an example. Look, there's a third. There's probably some that may not know what level of insurance they have, but I think you should be looking at that. Bronze. So look, we've got a third that are on the baseline. 1 in 3 clubs have the base insurance, which is that 50% coverage up to 2,000. This is pretty good. Like you got nearly 40% of clubs who are now saying that they've got the maximum cover, which is great. So I'd be looking at that. Jono, can you post in the Jardine link?
Yeah, it's in there. Yep.
Yeah, it's in the chat. We're posting the Jardine link. So if you want to explore that further, I think every club should definitely have a look at that. We're going to touch on, there's the link there on the screen right now. Now, this is a little bit complicated, but this is probably more relevant to high-end clubs about how do you make up a successful list? How do you make up a successful playing list? And there is a formula to doing this, and this is based on, as I said, a reasonable level of football. So I always talk about, and this is no different to what we did at AFL when I was in the AFL system. Every club needs younger players, that new players coming through. And I always say in our list, between 18 to 19, we hope to have around 5 to 6 players. That'll be regular senior players in our senior team. What makes up your core list is the 20 to 28-year-olds. And that should be about half of your list or a little bit more. My rule of thumb is 4 to 5 aging players in our level of football. When we were in AFL, I know with Hawthorn, they call it declining players or maturing players. Maybe that's a better word. But basically, that's how, I suppose, Coraline, we build our list. We want to make sure there's enough room for the kids. Our core footy product, which is the 20 to 28-year-olds, but we will never have more than 4 or 5 players that are 30 plus in our team. And because it's just not the formula at our level of football. If we had that senior players who they're on the downward curve, not on the upward curve. So that just gives you a bit of an idea. A lot of my clubs have got scarcity, so they don't have to manage this. But if you're a club that's trying to manage your list and try to get the best bang for your buck, that's how we talk about managing your playing list. And it's a bit of a step up for some of my clubs. Now, this is again, a breakdown of how I've always gone about managing our players at local level. So our salary cap this year is going to be 90 grand. Okay, so it's dropped by a percentage. I always talk about we need 2 stars that take up 25% of your cap, which is about $600 a game, right? We have about 4 to 5 A graders that are going to average about 400. This is post-COVID. those guys would have been on more money pre-COVID, right? Then we have 5 that are B graders are earning anywhere from $200 to $300. And then we have the rest that are juniors or C grade type players that are on around $100. But again, the formula is what comprises a premiership club. I've seen some clubs who have 5 A graders and the rest, they spend all their money on 5 players, but they can't have a weighted team to win a premiership or put themselves into winning a premiership. So it's a bit to take in, but some of my clubs, they do. I've got one club that I could name right now that have just gone 5 players, paying them a bucket load, paying them about 70% of the salary cap, and then there's another 16 spots they have to fill with 30% of the salary cap. So that's their strategy. Sometimes I'm not necessarily of that view in terms of how it works. So it's a bit to digest, but I think my view is you could even, if you see my mouse here, you could easily have 3 elite players and sacrifice 1 in each of these and have 3 elite players. Like in my competition last year, Phillip Island brought in Cam Patterson for Melbourne. He's an absolute elite player at our level of competition, probably helped them win a flag. They probably were down the bottom end, didn't have the depth because obviously they invested in a superstar at country level. And it's just an example of bringing in that franchise marquee type player. But again, it's what you can afford. Some clubs do the balance. They're sort of a little bit out of whack there. We're going to talk about recruitment strategy. And I always talk about the coach, getting the coach right. And Chris is going to spend a lot of time, 15 minutes on that tonight. Often the person, your footy director or your recruiting person, is equally as important as the coach. And Chris will probably reconfirm that, but I know, the coach is only good as the cattle you've got in front of it. And Alan Jeans used to have they used to call them sausages or something. You can boil them, you can fry them or something, but at the end of the day, they're all sausages. But at the end of the day, I think the fundamentals of getting the right coach, having that support with a list manager, whether that's a footy director, that could be 2 people or 1 person, but also you really need to understand the salary cap and the player points. Some of my clubs are still struggling with that and understanding and how to digest that. In terms of recruiting strategy, obviously from my experience is you've got to sign up your current players first, the ones you want to keep. I talk about targeting your top 5 players in your team or of the most influence. And often find when we get the top 5, the rest will sort of fall into place. And I'm a believer, you should be contracting as many players as you can, even if they're not walk-up players into your senior team. So I know with our club, we've already signed 26, 27 players. We'll probably sign 35 players this year because you know what happens in the middle of, some of these players all want to play seniors. If they're not playing seniors by June, they'll probably put in for a clearance and they might leave. But it's all about trying to protect your list as much as you can. But I'm about building the depth into your club, not just focusing on 5 to 10 players. We'll talk about recruitment. At the end of the day, the best recruiters are the players and their mates and their connections. You need to identify your gaps. You need to understand what your player. I'll send out some of these slides so that hopefully you can digest it because it's a lot to take in tonight. But that composition of the elite player, an A grade player, a B grade player, a C grade player, getting that mix right is really important. And also recruiting 1-point players. So if you're a club in the bottom part of the competition, your strategy should be to target former juniors or former players that have played senior footy because you get 1 year credit or 1 point credit for every year that you play. And I know that's what we're doing. We've got 3 or 4 players we're trying to get back to the club, all 1-point players. So it doesn't put any pressure on us with player points. We have no pressure anyway. So I think it's really important to, as you said, tap into your players. I'd even get an influential player on your recruiting committee because I know I'm the footy person at Coral Inn with David. Hopefully our coach is on tonight, but we have one player that's really close to a lot of our players, and he's sort of the person in the middle, and he gives us great insight into the players and what's going on behind the scenes. So I just want, John, can we just bring up a slide? And I just want to get everyone's perspective. As I said, feel free.
Is there one more thing to bring up there, or?
Yeah, just right. Yeah, you're right, mate. No, have I gone past it?
Back one. Yeah, just you didn't do that excitement factor. That's all.
Yes, really good, Jono. Good pickup. So a lot of my clubs who are really struggling, sometimes they need an excitement factor. Whether that's a new coach with a profile, make sure you do your diligence on a coach. Some clubs, target a marquee player that you might have to pay above the market to get them to your club if you feel you need your club to give a boost. And the introduction of some A graders. And, obviously you've got to have the funds to invest in that. And that's why our planning and budgeting is really important. But a lot of my clubs, they're so down that to get up, they really need to do something quite exceptional to create, otherwise you're losing your current players because they don't like getting beaten. That'll last for a period of time, but you've just somehow got to get competitive. And by bringing in a couple of players or profile to help create that new energy is really important for clubs that are really struggling. Let's do that now, John. So I just want to kick up that poll. So my question to everybody is, do you have the right football structure to maximise on-field success, whether it's in terms of the coach, do you have a director, do you have recruiting? So we're interested just to see, because often we find some of the clubs it's left to the coach to do everything. They've got a footy director who may not necessarily know football as well as they possibly could. But nevertheless, it's really...
it's one area that you want to get right. That's why you're
100%.
That's why you're here.
Chris will hear me say, everyone says you get the off-field right, on-field will come. I reckon it's the other way around. You got to get the on-field healthy, and then you still need stable administration. But if you've got it's like any business, you've got a poor product, it's hard to sell. And obviously, the more competitive you are, it generates interest in match day revenue and match day income. So let's just launch that. So we probably had 30% are really comfortable with the structure you've got. There's 70% that aren't, 50% that sort of, which is probably not overly confident from my point of view in terms of what that look. And again, some of my clubs don't know what the right structure is to have in place. And we went through that last week as part of our first session, but this is massive. Getting this right is pivotal. You would talk about getting the right president. You talk about getting the right coach. You got to get the right footy person to recruit, to manage your list, to manage your salary cap, to manage your recruiting, to manage all the coaches. So there's a fair bit to it. So, but I did just think it's really important to focus on that. I just want to go through this. This is actually, hey, Maine, are you there?
I don't think he is.
I think he was struggling to dial.
Yeah, mate, I'm here.
Okay, this is David. Beautiful. So this is what Coraline, and a lot of clubs do not ask enough of their players. And I always talk to the players about, look, it's more than having a kick at our club. We need you to contribute to our club. And clubs are not great at asking their players. And David can talk about the buy-in, but this is what we request our players to do each year. Like we do a membership drive, we do a makeover, a player makeover, we auction off, they pick up the rubbish after a blockbuster games, we auction off some of the senior players, taking the kids for birthday parties, as an example, and senior players to take training. And some clubs think that should be a given, particularly the last one, but for many it's not. So Manny, David Main's the coach of Coraline. He's going into his 6th year. He's been at our club for how many years now, Manny?
Six, since
Yes.
2014.
So he came as assistant coach for a couple of years, 14, 15, which is, and he ended up coaching a flag in 16, but he played in 3 flags in a row, and he's coached you've coached 3 grand finals in 4 years at Caroline. So how do you talk about the buy-in, the importance of the players and the leadership in this money, in terms of your role in this?
Yeah, that's the big one really, because the footy season goes for so long. You know, you got your off season with your demands of pre-season, then it flows into pracky games, and then into the actual season, which is a marathon in itself. So it's really important to. I know with us, we sort of lay this out on the players at the start of the year, or the upcoming season, and we prepare them and let them know what's coming and what we're asking of them. That we've committed to them as the commitment with their player payments, but also too is to buy into everything that's a part of our footy club and what we stand for. And with that, these are the 5 key things that we signalled out that we need the players to support it, and at the same time too, they might look at it. Some of them might look at it at the start and screw their face up a little bit, but when they're actually doing some of these tasks, they're actually getting a lot of enjoyment out of it, and that's the pleasing thing to see. And vice versa, the same thing. Like the one with the rubbish. After we're fortunate that we have a night game, at least one night game a year, and that's when we pick up the rubbish around the ground.
Here it is, Manny. I've just put it up on the screen. So that's our guys after round 1 last year, walking around. And you'll see a guy here has got his arm in a sling. One bloke's got his arm in a sling. Look at him. He's still picking up the rubbish. Now, that's that message it sends to the volunteers. And we had probably how many people were there that night, Manny? There was a big crowd.
A couple of thousand, easy.
And yeah, you go, mate.
We'll have the volunteers that normally pick up the rubbish after a home game. Them coming up to myself and other people involved with our footy club, saying how much they appreciate the players going out of their way to pick up the rubbish. To me, that just shows that the volunteers that are there week in, week out, you get so much appreciation of seeing the players give back to the club.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the kids' party. That was something that just came about. And it was basically the players just doing like a little footy clinic for these, 15, 20 kids. At the same time too, the players are getting a lot of enjoyment out of it, as much as at the start when they think, I don't know if I'm going to like that. They actually enjoy it, and they feel that bit of giving back to the footy club, and they can see the big picture in it. So it's a massive part of, and also too, the other positive you get is your players are mingling, and socialising and bonding together, which helps build that camaraderie that they need during the season.
Yeah, perfect. And I asked David just to chip in there because the coach needs to drive this with the leadership group. And I've introduced this to some of my clubs, and they just shake my head. Oh no, our players wouldn't do that. There's no way known our players would do that. And I go back to them and say, who's running the club? There's a tail wagging the dog. And often a lot of my clubs, the players are in control. And I could talk about that forever. But so basically that's sort of my part. And this is just our players going around. So I'm going to hand you over to Chris Connolly now. So Chris is going to talk about how to appoint, review and develop coaches. Everyone should know Chris is passionate about community footy. He's passionate about, I'm in this business because of Chris, because he introduced this concept to me 5 years ago. And he is as invested as anyone in community sport around Australia, I can tell you that. So you there, Connells?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Terry. My business, Advanced High Performance, also did some coaching support. So what I'm about to show you was designed by a guy called Peter Nicholson and myself. Peter coached premierships at St Bernard's, East Burwood, Old Haileybury and Casey Demons, all in the top division. He's been a teacher for 30 years. We're great mates from uni. And he was the coaching coordinator at Park Orchards Junior Footy Club, and I was trying to do the East Ringwood Junior Footy Club for our kids. So we're doing our head in because the coaches have such a limited time in preparing and coaching because they've got families and businesses and all the things attached to it. So we try to give some support. One of the things we did do was talk about how to appoint a coach. As Terry said, he'll say the two most important people are the president and the coach, but we all know if you haven't got the right coach, it can create a whole lot of problems on and off the field for your club. So you want to maximise the chance of getting the right coach. And it also shows the professionalism of your club in the way you go about trying to find and appoint a coach. And it'll also increase your chances of getting a good coach because they want to kind of interview you too if they're quality coaches, whether you're the club for them, and you'll be interviewing them whether they're the coach for your club. So it's really important to be methodical in the way you go about appointing your coach. And as I say, you want to maximise your chances of getting the right coach because it's going to take care of a lot of things in your club if you can do the right job. And just through this process, one of the intangibles of this webinar is you can see the relationship between Terry and David, Terry the footy manager and David the coach. They've just got a special bond supporting one another, and that relationship's been built over a long period of time. So if you get a good coach, you want to keep them because they're pretty hard to find. The first thing, and look, this is only our opinion. Every club's different. Everyone has their own style of going about their business. So it's, hopefully we'll give you one or two tips along the way that might assist you in getting the right coach. And look, there'll be a focus here on the senior coach of the club, but this process should really be for all of your coaches because you want to have a good coaching team. Often the coaches that are assisting the senior coach make up for his weaknesses. And last week I said often your strength is your weakness. Even you can pick out any AFL coach and they're either too soft, too hard, too this, too that, too structured, too tactical, whatever the case may be. So it is really about your team. And also with the point system, you want a really good under 18 and under 19 coach to make sure all the best talent in the region comes to your club to be coached to the best of their ability. But we'll have a look at the coaching appointment. It's got to be methodical to increase your chances of getting it right. The first thing you have to do is do a club assessment. Really important to find out really where you're at as a club. And within that, set up the expectations you're going to have of the teams on the field for the upcoming season, because that's going to play the part in point 2 in appointing the style of coach that you need. So last week I spoke about the style of coach. Do you need a coach who's a playing coach with leadership on the field? Do you need a coach who's going to recruit players to your club? Do you need a coach who needs to bring strong disciplines into the club for whatever reason just dropped off? Or do you have a club that's a little bit fractured for whatever reason, so we need to galvanise that group? Or is it a young group and we need to develop their individual skills as well as their understanding of the game? So often a coach is made up of a lot of these different styles, but they do weight themselves to one part of it. When you talk about technically the style of coach, you are talking also about whether the coach is strong on their demands or do they engage the playing group into how they're going to go about coaching, or the third part, are they going to have more of a life approach, not just the sport, but about a life approach to all the players on the playing list? And as I said before, often there's a combination of those three things that then kind of come out to create the style of coach. So that's really important. The next thing is to look at the skill set that you are looking for your coach, which will lead into your job description. And we break it into 3 areas. We break it firstly into the leadership area. What type of leadership is the coach going to bring to your club? What personal qualities does he have? What management style? How does he go about his communication? And what type of appetite to learn themselves have they got? And those components all play their part in the leadership. The technical skills are probably the more obvious one. I like to break the technical stuff down into 4 areas: the individual skill development, the team skills and the way the team goes about its business, the physical skills, and coaches at community level need to build a conditioning component into their training program with hopefully a weighting towards the more ball handling and team playing type of skills. And fourthly, the mental skills. How do we increase confidence within the group? How do we improve concentration? I think Terry said it before. A coach has to fill all these roles to maximise their chances of being successful in your club. So it's a pretty tough job.
Where's the psychologist come in, Connell?
What's that?
Where does the psychology degree come in?
Well, that's right. And, you know, the one thing is you've got to be highly organised in your training. You've got to be clear on the way you want to go about playing. You want to have a plan in place to improve the confidence of the players and improve their conditioning, because what we know about football is that curveballs will come your way for whatever reason. Is it an injury? Is it a lack of momentum for the season, a losing rut? Is it players heading off on a wedding over in Ireland? That often happens in the amateurs. You know, you get some type of curveball that you've got to be able to deal with. And even from a training point of view, I say to coaches, you've got to be highly organised to maximise every minute of training for two reasons. Number one is you don't train the players enough. So don't waste a minute of training. But when you get to training, all of a sudden, someone's ill, someone's injured, someone couldn't make it, key player. You've got to restructure the team component of your training. So you are juggling or spinning plates, and you need to spin them well to make sure you maximise your chances of a good training session. So the third one is the high performance culture. So I spoke about leadership, technical skills, and the high performance culture, that there is an attitude to learning. We learn from our mistakes. We want to get better. The committee's going to get better. The coaches are going to get better. The players are going to get better. We're going to set goals, action plan to achieve them. And we're going to lift the bar. You know, we're going to lift the bar on how we go about things, because we want to play to the best of our ability. And that type of environment created will attract quality footballers and netballers to your club. So they're kind of the planning stages for the club, really important. Look, the other thing is, as a club, if you do have a strategic plan in place and you show the way you go about running your business, you know, you're going to have around the football community people wanting to coach your club. The application process, you know, you
have to keep funnels. You have to keep moving. We're going to run out of time. Mate.
You can set out how you want people to go about applying in a written format. Have the job description ready to go. Then we advertise, headhunt, go through your media outlets, you know, put it out there that we want the best coach in the region to be coaching our club. Then there's obviously a shortlisting process. We go through conducting interviews. Make sure that you set out the interview questions before the interview meeting, and make sure the person being interviewed gets a copy of those questions so they can prepare to give an answer to the best of their ability. Second interviews may not be needed, but you know, if you've got some coaches that you're really competing for the position, you probably need to have a second interview, and the coach themselves may want that second interview to ask more questions about the club. I mean, if you're going to build a serious relationship with this coach, and this coach is going to coach your club for the next 5 years, then that hopefully they're taking a strong interest in the club. And any of the misgivings they might have. It's tough to coach a club, and it's also tough to run a club. So I'm sure there'll be some greyness in areas that need to be sorted out through this second interview process. Then make your decision. So once the decision's made, everyone in the decision-making process is on board, and the announcement is really important, particularly to the key stakeholders in your club. That announcement, that they're engaged. They understand what you're trying to do together, and hopefully we'll have the greatest coach in the club's history. Okay, so we spoke about the interview process. Through the interview process, you need to talk about a coach review. Now, arguably the biggest challenge to reviewing a coach is time. We just don't have time to do it. We're juggling balls. We're in the middle of the season. There's a lot going on. We just don't have time to review the coach. So two things I suggest. Firstly, you have to do it. If you don't, you're not as professional as you think you are. Secondly, let's make it short and sharp. You know, let's get to some meaningful discussions. Let's talk about the strengths. Often people think it's a negative thing. It's a very, very positive thing. And it's a positive thing because there's a lot of strengths to the coach, or you would have sacked him by the time the interview came around. So he must be doing a lot of good things. The second thing is we want to help the coach. Now, I say this, a coach, and I mean coaches at every level, should work on one aspect of their coaching. We want them to coach for 5 years. We want to make them better. Yes, they're going to learn by the mistakes they make and the good things they do and their experience, but we really want to focus on some key things that they need some help with. Now, you could name any AFL coach in the last 20 years, and I'll tell you something that A, they should be looking to improve, and B, they probably are improving it. So if it's good enough for the coach at the good level, it's good enough for coaches at every level. Now, it mightn't be as difficult as you think, because it might be communication. Is it communication to the executive committee? Well, we need to make time to make that happen. Is it communication to the players? It's someone who doesn't have a job that has them practice communicating. So, but there might be a teacher around the club that can listen in and see if they're making the simple points and getting the message across and those types of things. So the way we do it is we have 10 areas, and they are, you know, the basic areas to coaching: your training program, style of play, the tactics you run, how do you conduct yourself on match day, how you motivate your players, the leadership qualities you show, how you develop leaders within the group, how you manage your staff. And we just have the coaches rate themselves out of 10. The person representing the match or the executive committee rates them out of 10. And then often you look at them and you say, well, okay, we're on the same wavelength here. These are the positives with the coaching. We're on the same wavelength, but we know, we both agree you've got to work on this area. Let's set a plan up in place. And if there's any significant differences, well, that meaningful discussion to sort that out has to happen then. Because this is the most important person in the club. We're in season. Yeah. We're going to have this guy, you know, really looking to be on track, and everyone involved, because we know the finals are coming up, hopefully in a position to play in them. And, you know, we want to give him a lot of confidence moving into that. When we talk about development, you know, you look at one thing, they're the areas I spoke about. You might have something else that you want to do. Now, you might need a club, and this happened to me when I was appointed coach of Fremantle in 2002. Fremantle were $8 million in debt, and they made it very clear to me that I was a club coach, not just a team coach, that we had to get out there and generate funds through our membership, our sponsorship, had to get out there, sell our plan, talk it up, and try and generate some, have to clear that debt for a start. Our major sponsor was paying the interest on the loan, so it wasn't a good position at the time. But they made that clear from the get-go, so I knew exactly. So in my first season as senior coach at Fremantle, in December, the pre-season, I took a week away from the club and travelled all through the south of Western Australia, talking to supporter groups. I'd have a breakfast in Bunbury, I'd have a lunch in Collie, and I'd have a dinner in Bustleton, and I did that for 5 days in a row. Talked to all the media out, trying to get everyone involved to support Fremantle, because that's what was part of the plan going into it. And I had to back my assistant coaches in to run the training program at the time. So we look at the focus area, just pick one, and then put a development plan in product. So Jono, pick out one of those focus areas.
Communication.
I just spoke about communication, so pick another one.
Leadership.
Okay, leadership. There's little leadership courses. There might be a person around the community who has tremendous leadership qualities. There might be someone around who has leadership experience. I saw Simon Eichold from Echuca, was a very successful footballer, coach, and has done it all at football, in the football scene, to mentor, the coach of Echuca, or pass on tips in as he sees it. It can be just little things like that, to have a discussion about leadership, to have a reflection on leadership, to read a book or watch a documentary on just a little thing, but they get their heads in, look, we really want to get this area right. Now, the odds are they're going to improve in that part of their coaching, either in a small way or a big way, but the faith, the support, the trust that you're building in trying to help this person, because we set this out at the start of when we conducted the interview process, that we were going to want to improve your coaching because we want you to coach at this club for a long period of time. At the end of it, review the development program. Do we do another route? Do we choose something else, or do we look at, going on with the thing we're focused on? But it's like anything. If you're not focused on it, if you haven't got an action plan in place to achieve it, you're not going to get as better at it as quickly as you would like. So it might be tactically, getting someone to analyse opposition clubs, talk about tactics being run. One thing about coaching is that coaches need to be innovative. They need to do it better. They need to be ahead of the game, the best coach in the region. So, there's a little bit of, for Al Clarkson, every time he gets something right, there's two that didn't work. So there's got to be a little bit of balance within that and a little bit of guidance if that's something they want to get better at. But there's a lot to coaching. It's a big job. They need your support. They expect your support. They expect you to be professional in the way you conduct the running of your club. Mistakes will be made, and they'll be when you least expect them. How do you think the Richmond Football Club is feeling right now? How do you think Ben Gale's feeling? He'll probably be the next CEO of the AFL, or Neil Baum, one of the great mentors in AFL history, or Damien Hardwick, one of the great coaches. They've just been rocked, through a basic error that kids make. But they'll get back on the horse quick. There'll be a quick crisis meeting. Terry, we don't talk about that too much. Quick crisis meeting, put a plan in place. They'll try and suck it up, but it's tough. It's tough running a club. It's tough coaching a team. But that's what we love about it. It's exciting, the challenges, the opportunities, and it makes us live, feel life. How'd I go, TD?
Mate, A grade, great effort, Christopher. And you can hear the passion coming through his voice. Like he's as passionate about anyone in community footy, and his knowledge. Like he's rushed a lot into tonight, but it's a lot to this coaching gig, and you've just got to get it right. And also I think those are our current clubs I mentioned here. Do that simple style coach, so you can actually work out what sort of coach you need. Hopefully, most clubs have got your coaches by now for next year, but if you haven't, that might be an asset. But thanks, Christopher, for that. So basically, we talked about tonight is all about getting our on-field healthy, and we always talk about this a summary, a formula running a healthy program. Get your senior coach right, appoint your footy director. That footy director could also be your list manager. Composing your list, that sort of slider. What's the makeup of your list? How many young ones? How many in their peak? When 20 to 28 versus the aging. You got to know your salary cap. You got to know your player points. You got to understand the market of players. And this is where a lot of clubs struggle, that they pay overs for players, right? And that's why the person doing the negotiations needs to understand the market. Talked about real success versus cosmetic, and also contract negotiation. And so there's a lot to it, isn't there? And that's why it's hard to maintain sustained success. But if you can, it really needs that expertise to hold it all together. I'm going to talk about, just quickly go through this. We raised this last week, but the Sports Foundation declared, they did an audit of 5,000 clubs, 100 sports. Jono, can you post that link into the chat room? It's a pretty powerful report that says the impact on COVID on community sport in the next 12 months could be significant. And it's pretty dramatic, but they're predicting 1 or 4 clubs could go to the wall. And it's a really detailed report. And Jono's just posted in there. Have a look at it. But there could be a drop-off in volunteers and even a drop-off in participation because players have had a year off and will they want to return? So they've set a real red flag to sports around Australia. So basically, I just want to go through this because it's one thing to invest in your football program, but I want to see whether you've got a model that is going to raise enough funds for you to actually meet your obligations. So I would like everyone to just look at this. So if this is your club, in terms of how you raise money, you got a bit of canteen, you got a bit of bar, your registrations are the players, you got 0 to 20 sponsors, you might have some fixed signs around the joint, 2 to 3 branding assets, might be a polo, might be a jumper, might be some shorts, a sponsor on some shorts. You have 3 to 6 fundraisers and 0 to 30 financial members. So When I say financial members, they're not registered players, they're not life members. People have actually bought a membership at your club. So let's quickly, and if some clubs, sports don't have gates, but you might have a gate. So let's go through that poll. I'll be interested in, and now we've got certainly 70 people tuned in here. Is this how your club raises revenue at the current time? So if everyone can have a go at that. Pretty consistent data to the other 3,500, Jono.
Yep, that's
Alrighty.
compelling.
That's amazingly close. So let's go with that, Jono. So 85% of people on this session said that is how we raise money. That is 50 years old. That is out of date. Clubs are going up and down the one spot, and no one's teaching our clubs any different. No one's teaching our clubs any different. And that's why there's more clubs in financial trouble than not. So we're going to get, and that's it. Look, it's pretty, we've shown those results, but it's just consistent for all our sports, because who's teaching? And I'm going to give you this next slide, which is even more important. I always talk about there's a model to run a club, right? There's a model, and doesn't matter what your level. So if you're a club that has to turn over 120 grand, you need to do 4 to 6 of these well. And a lot of our workshops we do with clubs, they're doing 2 or 3 well. And they're spending 100 hours raising $1,000. Highly inefficient, highly ineffective. Like we're doing a Ovens and Murray club, when is that? Monday, Tuesday night. They'd have to do 10 of these well to be viable. We did a club this week in South Australia who turns over 200 grand. They'll have to do 6 to 8 of these well. But a lot of our clubs are using that model, which is totally out of date, but they don't know any different. So that's where our workshops come into play. A lot of clubs ask me, I'd like to think we've met, John and I have met with many clubs around Australia as anyone individually. And they always ask me, what is the one thing that clubs don't have? They don't have a plan. They're just going up and down the spot and doing the same old thing. And, you know, what we do is, I've got my slides out of whack there, but I'm going to come back here. Wait a minute, one second. But this is what we offer our clubs. You know, there's a lot of free stuff. There's a free book. You get a free 20-minute chat. The webinars, which I'll give you information in a minute, start on Monday night. But we give you a health audit of your club. We give you a revenue plan that should generate you a minimum of 30 to 75 grand. And I don't say that lightly. We give you a 12-month ops plan, and we give you a revenue, and we give you a strategic plan. And for those clubs, I've just got my slides out of whack here, John. I must that. It's 2.5 grand, including, and for those including GST. But we say you can pay us half up front and half in 60 days, and we know we pay our way many times over, as an example. So basically, this is what we provide. We do an audit. We give you the revenue plan. It's just become a long way. Jono's taken it to a new level since he's been working with me in the last 12 months. We then give you an operational plan. We give you a strategic plan. And then we give you, a lot of clubs it's a bit like your recruiting structure tonight. They get that wrong. The committee structure is so out of date, it's not funny. Anyone is going to my website under book. I wrote a book about the community challenges around all sports around Australia, how all the models are out of date. And it's just no one's shaking the tree. The volunteers, I talk about the over 55s. There's a federal government initiative for people that are 55 and over, pre-pension, to be funded to work for your club. 99% of my clubs don't go. So we go through all that. And we basically, this is what we give you. We give these clubs all these plans. We do an audit. We give you a revenue plan, ops plan, strategic plan. I just want to show you, we showed a video last week. Thumbs up if you can hear this.
No, need to tick the box.
Wait a minute. Sorry, Jono. I did tick the box, but it was... Wait, we're going to have a look here.
Thought it was going to be the 2 days?
It was basically what I thought it would be.
And you go?
Oh, for me, it was probably better than what I thought. So what we actually got was AFL thinking, big club thinking, but at a grassroots level. So for me, we got lots of insights of how to run a community club, but run it with that AFL kind of lens to it. And so for me, it was really worthwhile.
I think it was really good. There's a stigma against that sort of thing. Why do you need people to come in and help you? But the good thing is, and I think there was a slight, we need to do this, but I think now this
You there, mate?
sold it.
Oh, Jono?
Yeah, gotcha.
My thing's crashed here for some reason.
You've got a bit robot. It might be your internet, maybe.
Yeah, so Johnny, you have to keep going for a minute because mine's crashed. It's crashed
Yeah.
here.
Sorry, guys. I might, Chris, you there? Just had a couple of questions coming through. I'm going to jump off mute, mate.
Can you hear me, Jono?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Is it clear or not clear? No.
You've gone roboty. It's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah, just jump out, jump back in again, I reckon.
What about now?
No, still a little bit roboty, I think.
Yeah, the internet's gone down.
Yeah. Oh, good. Chris, you there, Chris?
Yep.
Yeah, gotcha. So Shane asked a little bit earlier, how much should you pay a coach? That's a bit of a how long is a piece of string type thing, I think. But do you have any sort of thoughts there around something like that?
No. I don't, mate. I don't know. I mean, it's...
What you can afford, basically?
Oh, no. You're competing. It depends what competition you're in. If you want to be the best in the competition, you have to see what the going rate is, and you have to see what... I guess, you'll take into consideration the hours that the coach is putting on. Some clubs have had semi-full-time coaches. Some have had full-time coaches. Some haven't. Some have had two coaches. Maybe the coaching team. I mean, you've got to work that out yourself, what suits you. I mean, Terry's better off at answering that question. Jono, while I'm on, I want to mention women coaches. Like, we've really got to make sure we get more women skilled up in coaching because of the women's teams and the competition. Super important. And, mentoring those type of people, the senior coaches, taking on that mentor role to improve the coaching within the club is really important.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Jono?
Yeah, got you, mate. You're back.
Yeah, the system just crashed. I thought I was going to lose everyone for a second. Now, just quickly, for the Victorian clubs, there's a grant that's come out for clubs who want a basic strategic plan. I'll be applying for 10 to 15. So if you're one of those clubs who've got some interest in this, just let us know. I think it closes in the next week too. Hey, Sinkers, are you there? David Sinclair, can I put you on the spot, mate? Is that all right?
Yeah, you can, Terry.
Yeah, so David's the chairman of Ovens and Murray Footy League. We've been working with them for the last 12 months. You just want to talk about the role that we've played with your league and how it's worked with your club?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So we first got introduced to Terry about 4 years ago when the league was looking to put together a strategic plan, and we got Terry in to do an overview of our competition. He did spoke to all our clubs and reported back to the board, and from that we were able to put together a strategic plan based on the findings that Terry was able to provide us with from information he got from our clubs. So that was the start of our relationship, and from since then, over the last 4 years, and particularly over the last couple, Terry has spent time, I think now, with about 8 of our 10 clubs, and taken them through health checks and got them set up, and really just delved into how they currently run their football clubs, and in a lot of cases he's turned clubs on their head with the way that they now operate and run as almost as a business, I guess. So yeah, we've had wonderful success out of what Terry's been able to provide us. He's about to do another review of our league over the next couple of months to see what are the things that we need to focus on, particularly coming out of the COVID situation, and again to find out post the previous review just what things we've ticked off on, and what things we need to look at going forward. So we'll continue to work with Terry, and both the league and our clubs have got a lot of, I guess, knowledge and a different way to do things is what the bottom line is.
Perfect. Thanks, David. And look, I think it's good to hear firsthand. Some clubs have said to me, speak to a few clubs that have done our session, but we've been working the league for a few years, and I think we work with 9 clubs, and we're working with a 10 club next week. Just to give everyone, we're just about winding up now, but our webinar series starts on Monday night. It's 7 o'clock. It's an hour. It's first one's on committee structures. So we've got your email, and I think that we're hoping to get, Chris is hoping to get 300, really optimistic in getting 300 in each session. I think it'll build to that, but we've had a lot of interest already. I think we've got nearly 100 registered for Monday night. So we're really thrilled about that. Just in quickly go through this. This is a sort of summary of where we're at. This is all the plans the clubs have to go. I went through this last week. It's a bloody lot of work. We're expecting volunteers to pull all this together. The stuff in yellow are the red writing we actually do. But to expect volunteers who are juggling family, income and work, it's a real commitment. Also, Johnny, can you bring that up for a second? But basically, bring up that chat. So anyone who wants a 20-minute chat with us, no obligation. I think I just saw a couple that we're doing tomorrow. But basically, if you just want to have a chat about your club, about how you can be better, a lot of my clubs know there's something not quite right. And they get caught in this blinkered view that they think they can work their way through it. And things aren't, they just can't. There's a real expertise in this. My expertise is not in coaching by any stretch. That's what Chris does. Chris is an expert in all part of football. My background is obviously administration and running community clubs, which is a long way from where Chris is. But if you feel that you need some extra support, that's what we're here to do, and hopefully help out as many clubs. Let's and look, and there's a lot of clubs that are, they don't have a plan and they just seem to get stuck. So let's just do a quick recap. We went through the data from last week. There is a formula to a successful footy department. Chris talked about the critical nature of getting the appointing the coaches right. What's the composition of your list? The makeup of your list. How do you break down the salary cap? Your player commitments, not just having a kick, it's a bit more than that. Your recruiting strategy, developing coaches and insurances. So there's a hell of a lot to this. And basically, we've gone over, we go for an hour, but we started at 5 past. But this is a lot to take in. We provide our clubs 12-month support if they're a part of it. They ring us about anything and everything. But if there's any questions there, Jono, we can answer.
I had one come through before.
If anyone wants to throw a question or ask Chris a question, but hopefully you found this session of value, and the admin sessions start on Monday night.
Yeah, Brian asked a little bit earlier, apart from locally, is there a place or a site to advertise where prospective coaches will look? Brett had good answers there. AFL HQs have areas on their websites as well as aussieplayers.com.au.
Do you know, I'm probably going to go against the grain here, but I'm a believer you go and get a coach. I've never got a coach by advertising. And it's about identifying a coach that you think could fit your club. I can honestly say we've only had 4 coaches in 16 years. I'm probably going against the grain here a bit, but I think identifying and targeting particular people to be a coach has been our best strategy. I'm not saying it's the only strategy, but it's been the best strategy. Yeah.
You're pretty lucky to have the network and the knowledge and all that sort of stuff around it, whereas some clubs might not. But
and I saw the answer earlier about the question about what do you pay a coach? How long is a piece of string? I would say depends on what level. Anywhere from depends on if it's Victoria, interstate, a lot lower. Like in Queensland, they're paying their coaches $0 to $5,000. Even at Quaffle level. Let's say Victoria as an example, base coaches are on 10 to 30. Depends on, some are paid more than that. But, it's, there's some at Div 1 that are on 40. But I would say the average would be, and also depends if it's a playing or non-playing coach. But look, 10 to 30, but it depends. It's a bit of a horses for courses depending on the quality of the footy, the demand on the coach to deliver, because it is like having a part-time job, but they're not getting paid a full-time salary.
Good question just came through from Peter. Do you focus on only semi-professional clubs, or are you able to adapt to amateur?
Absolutely. So we've done 3 amateur clubs in the last 10 days. Jono, who are they?
Yep. Westbourne,
Grammarians,
Old Peninsula, and
Old Halbury.
Peninsula and Old Halbury's.
So in the last 2 weeks, it'd be 2 weeks, I reckon.
Yep.
We've done 3 amateur clubs. It's the same fundamentals. And we've done, like in the last 2 weeks, we've done water polo, soccer, what else, Jono? Go-karts.
Baseball, go-karts, netball.
All the same issues.
Yep.
So the answer is, Pete, yeah, 100%. We adapt, and we've had pretty good success outcome on that. Anything else, mate?
Adrian just asked, will the slides be available?
Yeah, we'll definitely send some out. And we're going to release this tonight, this recording. We don't, and I'm not going to set a precedent for future admin recordings, but I'm going to happy to send the footy one. I'm really, because it's so important to get this right. And a lot of our clubs don't know where to start. And there's a lot to it, as Chris, listening to Chris tonight. So, I don't claim to be an expert in this field in that, what he does. At community level, I can get the players sorted and the coaches and so on, hopefully get the right coaches. But there's a lot to coaching, which I don't claim to be any expert in any stretch. I've never coached other than been assistant coach a few times. That's about it. So anything else, Jono?
That's it, I think. Yeah, so I think the recording will be up on YouTube in the next day or so.
Yeah. So thanks everybody. It's just we're an hour and 3 or 4 minutes. But thank you for dialing in. Hopefully you got some value out of it. As I said, there's our contact details on screen. And Connells, you can finish up, mate. You're good at summarising these sessions. Over to you, mate. You summarise it. I got you 1 minute to summarise, Christopher.
Well, what we've learnt dealing with all the clubs, yes, the fundamentals are the same. And it's interesting, what do you pay your coach? Well, it depends how much you can raise too. I mean, often people just spend what they can raise, or they kind of set a mark and raise that much. But you want to raise money and put more into your program, whether it's extra skills coaching, facility, whatever the case may be.
So, Chris, can I say, what are the top 2 things you would give these tips to take away with tonight?
The key is to be as well planned as you possibly can be as an executive committee. That's in running your club from an administration point of view and running your football department. Put as much planning. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. He said if he had to cut down a forest, I might get this wrong and it might be completely wrong, but he said if he had to cut down a forest in a week, he'd spend the first 3 days sharpening the axe.
Oh dear. Well, that's enough.
Planning's everything.
Planning is everything. It is. So, hope you got some great value. Thanks everybody for dialing in. Friday night's probably not a great time for this, but we thought in Victoria there might be a lot of people having not much to do. So, hopefully there's a little bit of entertainment. So, thank you for all, and we'll chat soon.